So it looks like we've had a pretty decent start to the fall 2018 season of anime, because one of the other anticipated shows that I've been really looking forward to when it comes to the fall 2018 season is Goblin Slayer. And with this show also does in fact make a good first impressions. So Goblin Slayer is animated by Studio White Fox and is based off the light novel series with the same name, and it actually does pretty well for itself, to be honest with you. The animation within this first episode of Goblin Slayer was really good in my personal opinion. There was a few moments in which I noticed that the anime did seem to have some CG use in it, but none of it was distracting whatsoever, and honestly there was very minimal use of the CG within this first episode of Goblin Slayer. So when it comes down to the CG, I think the CG is used in moderation, and it's actually well placed when it is actually used. So regarding that, let's go to the music. The music in this first episode of Goblin Slayer was actually pretty good in my personal opinion as well. You know, it seems when it comes down to some of the shows that I've been watching lately for the fall 2018 season, the music has been relatively well for the most part. But yeah, Goblin Slayer is basically a fantasy series. It's not an isekai, by the way. You might think going into it, it's probably going to turn out to be an isekai series because there is the whole fantasy aspect and what have you, but it's actually not. It's straight up just fantasy series with MMORPG elements. So more along the lines of, think of more like, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? Something like that. But regarding this anime is very, very dark. Honestly, I believe this anime actually is a seinen series. I could be completely wrong on that, according to the light novel, but the light novel does have a lot of dark moments within this series, and let me explain why. Well, for one, when it comes down to this first episode of Goblin Slayer, there was a lot, and I mean a lot of blood within this first episode. It was essentially a bloodbath. It really was. And there was also instances in which people's hands were being chopped off, they were being torn apart, goblins were, you know, taking off girls' clothes, and one girl even actually got raped within this first episode of Goblin Slayer. So yeah, rape is a thing within this series. Now granted, a lot of this stuff is censored from when it comes to the light novel, so if you actually want to get into, you know, the little intricacies of like what exactly happened, then you probably want to read the light novel if that is your cup of tea. But yeah, just keep in mind this series is very dark. I don't know how raunchy it can get at some points, but it is a very dark series, and if that fits your cup of tea, or if it doesn't fit your cup of tea, then this may or may not be the show for you. I mean, there was even an instance in which one of the characters who we get introduced, who happens to be the character that has, you know, the title as his name, Goblin Slayer, he even killed off goblin children. Yes, children are actually dying within this episode. Granted, they are monsters, but nonetheless, they're children. So what exactly is Goblin Slayer about? What's the first episode like? Well, you see, the first episode starts off with this girl named Priestess. All characters in the series are named after their roles, by the way. So we have like the Priestess, the Mage, the Warrior, you know, stuff along the lines of that. All the characters are going to be named after their roles. They don't really have a designated name to them. Now, Priestess joins a party of adventurers who are going goblin hunting when the mission suddenly goes terribly wrong. And pretty much from that summary, that is pretty much the whole first episode in a nutshell. So now when it comes down to the goblins within this series, from what we know of, you know, MMORPGs for the most part, goblins are actually supposed to be very, very weak, and that is the case from what it seems like in this series as well. Goblins are actually supposed to be very, very weak. I think there was even a mention that dragons exist in this universe as well, but when it comes to the goblins in general, when they are in packs, being led by higher skilled goblins, they can be very, very, very dangerous, especially when it comes down to the, you know, their dungeons that in which they are in. So yeah, that is why it is very, very, very important to travel within a pack when you're going goblin hunting, because you never know what might be thrown at you, and clearly in this first episode, the adventurers were not ready whatsoever. And from then on, that is basically where we see Goblin Slayer show up and save Priestess and kind of help her out escape the dungeon. Now, when it comes to Goblin Slayer in general, we don't really have a lot to go off of when it comes down to Goblin Slayer, and I'm sure that's probably going to be explained in future episodes, especially, you know, what happened to him in his past, in which why he holds such a massive grudge when it comes down to goblins in general, and how he sees all goblins as evil. And even Priestess mentioned, you know, at the scene where he was about to kill the goblin children, that what if there's good goblins in this world? So that really raises the question, all goblins, you know, bad? Are they evil? But Goblin Slayer doesn't seem to see that whatsoever. He is willing to go through any means necessary to kill all goblins. So something very messed up must have happened in his past, and I'm interested to see what that is exactly. But I'm assuming it must involve, you know, a family relation, something along the lines of that. So we'll see what happens, you know, within the future episodes as that gets explained further on. So yeah, when it comes down to the very first episode of Goblin Slayer, I honestly think it did a pretty good job, and I think it made a solid first impressions. And I'm definitely going to be checking out more of this because I'm very interested to see on how far this show is actually willing to go and what exactly can happen in it. And I'm interested in the world building as well. But like I said before, not everyone is going to enjoy this series because there are a lot of dark elements in which I've already stated before. So not everyone is going to enjoy this type of show. It's not going to be your cup of tea. So yeah, let me know your personal thoughts on how you enjoyed the show. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Are you one of the few people in which you're probably going to skip out on this show just because of what it contains? Just let me know in the comments down below. But please don't leave any spoilers in the comment section. I'm trying to remain, you know, just totally blind to this series in general, and that's how I like my anime. I like to go in blind for the most part. So yeah, please keep that in mind, and also I don't want anybody else getting spoiled in the comments down below. So with that said, everyone, please be sure to like the video if you happen to enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and you want to see further anime and gaming content here on the channel from me. And with that said, I'll catch you all in the next one.